Welcome, everybody, to our latest Reversion webinar. We're really excited to get started today. My name is Ryan Hillary. We'll be going through how to build brand partnerships for high-ticket items or infrequent purchases with Erica. Oh, Erica, I should have checked with you on last name pronunciation.
It's
Sietsma?
Sietsma, yeah.
Sietsma, Erica Sietsma. I could have been
Dutch.
confident and just gone for it. Erica, welcome. I'm so grateful to have you here. We've talked several times, and I always enjoy our conversations, so I'm particularly excited about today. But we'll be diving in for our audience, just how to navigate driving value for brands that are selling these like high ticket one-off purchases, like very specific applications. And so we'll give folks a minute or two to join, whether it's on YouTube or LinkedIn or just in the StreamYard channel itself. So while folks are joining, what are you drinking? Are you having tea?
I have tea. I am look, I jury rigged this mug. It's actually like a Starbucks mug, but we have auto stickers that stick the sticker
Very
in
nice.
it. I was like, instead of going and buying like mugs that I might choose in mind, I like ceramic mugs, so they're really hard to get custom ceramic. So I drink tea. It's winter here in New York City, so I go through an aggressive amount of tea.
Now, is it like an herbal tea or is this like a chai or?
Right now, yeah. Usually around 1, I should stop drinking my caffeinated tea and an herbal. But this one is like a quirky in between. It is actually kind of an herbal. It's called a Focus Blackberry. Okay. And I guess it helps you focus. I don't know it, but I don't think it's as heavy as like a black tea. But in the morning, I'll have like a matcha and then a chai and then an aggressive amount. Like I will probably go through like 6 to 8 different teas during the day.
That's fun. I'm a black coffee, but every once in a while I'll make a chai tea latte, which can be good because I don't usually drink coffee after 11 or so. But.
Yeah. I think it's just the cold weather. It's nice to have something warm in my hands, and I guess I could do like hot water with lemon, but that just feels so lame.
Yeah. Maybe if you're like under the weather, I think.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Well, cool. Well, so thank you again, Erica. We'll go ahead and get started. We'll cover a couple of housekeeping things for folks that are joining. If you have any questions for Erica, definitely chime in the comments, and we can pull those up, whether they're coming from YouTube, StreamYard themselves, or if it's coming from LinkedIn. We'll try to answer those as we're going through. Once again, the goal here is really just to talk through sort of the differences that you'll face as a brand when you're trying to promote something that's a bit more transactional versus something that's more high ticket, something that's high ticket but not for everybody, right? And that's a perspective I think, Erica, you bring that was really, really interesting when we were talking a couple of weeks back. Is it's just how the space you tend to operate in, it brings a level of complexity that you just learn how to sort of manage brands in this space. And can apply it to just easier industries, generally speaking. So with that, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself, Autofluencer, customers you serve, the things that you guys do. So the floor is yours for take a couple of minutes to let folks know who you are and background and all that.
Well, yeah. So Autofluencer, we are a platform to help brands, agencies, content creators, motorsports racers in predominantly motorsports, performance, automotive, and enthusiast industries, outdoor recreation, helping them simplify their partnership. So that partnership could be like a sponsorship program. That could be a influencer program. Right. However, that looks in our software actually helps them manage and measure those partnerships. So we have tools to make the whole application process more streamlined, or the inbound interest for people that want to work with our brand partners, or even the agencies that are representing the brands. And then we have a measurement tool. That's kind of the number one thing people use us for, is like, what are we getting out of this? And so what you guys have at Reversion is cool, because that's then the downstream conversion. But we are the higher funnel. We're the social media. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whether it's a sponsor program, you're just giving product, whether it is like a hardcore content creator partnership where you're actually paying them, giving product. But you kind of want to know, did they post about it? What did we get? And if someone tags you as a brand or an agency, you can see that, but it's really hard to quantify what's going on. And so we come in and we help with that quantification. And then we actually put a dollar value on that called an earned media value. It's very common in influencer world. We didn't come up with the metric, though everybody does it a little bit different. We took what we felt was the most fair way to do it, where you take the views times like a CPM. So you'll divide them by 1,000, multiply it by a CPM, which is a standard ad phrase. We have kind of a way to figure out what CPM to use. And then you would add that to kind of a newer metric, which is what's really unique to social media, is this idea of engagement. So likes, comments, shares. And so then you would take all of the engagements that content creator or that athlete's content got for you, and you'd multiply those engagements times the cost per engagement. You'd add those two numbers together, and that's the earned media value, which is essentially what the brand or agency on behalf of the brand did not have to spend in not only creating content, which is usually from very unique events, or very unique kind of use cases, building a vehicle, tuning a vehicle, racing a vehicle, and then then having to promote it to audiences that are already engaged. So we do that for our brand partners. And then what's cool about us and a little different than some of the mainstream tools is we are actually a two-sided tool. So we give that athlete, that motorsports racer, that builder, that enthusiast in our spaces, we actually give them the ability to see exactly how they're being measured by the brand or the agency. But then even more so, they can build their own reports for their sponsors or partners who aren't using Autofluencers. So then they look like total rock stars because they're like, hey, here's my earned media value for the last 3 months. I'm like, wait, what? So it's a kind of a two-sided tool. And we like to say, we simplify the process so our partners can do more of what they love.
Awesome. When it comes to brands, are they usually relatively sophisticated when it comes to influencers and partnerships? Are they pretty new? Like what is that sort of like typical or even ideal customer for you look like, just as folks are tuning in?
Our ideal customer is someone with already a fairly robust partnership program.
Okay.
Whether that is a sponsorship program or they're already working with influencers, you do not have to be paying them. It could be a product-only partnership, but you're usually working with 10 to 20 people.
Okay.
Our average partner is usually somewhere between 40 to 60, and then we have some up above 250, kind of a range of sizes. Agencies also would fall into that, whether it's an influencer agency or an agency representing brands, that just needs a faster way to manage and measure that process. A lot of agencies, unless they are in fact an influencer and activation industry or agency, don't want to be in that space. It's a lot of work. And so our tool kind of takes a good chunk of that work out of the process. And from a sophistication standpoint, I would say, we're in motorsports, so they are the OGs of sponsorships, and I would almost say they're the OGs of influencer relationships, because when you think of motorsports sponsorships, it is literally an influencer, and it used to be more of like, I'm going to put this sticker on my car or on my bike or whatever, and everybody who sees it is going to be like, oh, they work with these guys? They must be cool. We all know that now, it's more about the social and what you can see, but so I'd say they've been doing it forever. They haven't always had a way to measure it or an affordable way to measure it.
Yeah.
And so that is very new for a lot of them. And then trying to think of it as more of a high funnel, which we'll talk about more, kind of than an education around how to think of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. So I have two sort of leading questions to our main questions here that I want to dive into. One is, I think maybe it's more of an observation. The cool thing about this space, right, is that it's not purely online, though. Eventually, these people go public somewhere. If it's a big enough partnership, like it's on TV. And so it's cool to see. It's not limited to just a social media channel or just a post somewhere. And then suddenly I saw them on ESPN or I saw them on this race. And so that's cool. I wonder how often do you have situations or things that you can call back? And this, when it goes outside of motorsports, I think it can relate to brands that like do more than just influencers, right? They have these TV spots that they do. They have more traditional media that they're doing. They have even billboards that they're doing. How they can see those things almost interact in the wild. It's sort of 1 + 1 is 3. I don't know if you had any interesting observations from clients on that front.
Yeah. So most of our partners, well, maybe they have a few sponsorships that would get mainstream coverage. So maybe on an ESPN, or Fox Sports covers. NHRA, which is, we have a lot of drag brands that sponsor drag racers. So that's kind of bigger for us. We don't play as much in the bigger, like the NASCAR or the F1, because those function so differently in how they're funded. A lot of our, like the racing is driver funded, or they have very small teams. And so it is a family that has a team. They got one car, maybe they got a second car, and then they'll bring in a driver. But most of it is, I am the driver. I build my own car. I work on my own car. I have to pay to get it to the race. I have to pay a pit crew. Like, it is not some corporate entity, which is what you would think of NASCAR, IndyCar, and F1. Those are kind of a different class. And so the ways they measure is different. So you can pull in Nielsen data to see how many times where things, like we've talked to some people, especially agencies that manage larger race teams, or help with larger racers, or, kind of these smaller teams. They're looking at like combinations of using our platform for all of the social and maybe combining it with something like a Nielsen to kind of see that. But to your point, most of it doesn't get coverage like that. So maybe it's on a Flow Racing, maybe it's on a random streamer, and, and or in person. So you're going to a Good Guys car show. How do you quantify that? So that is still something we are trying to wrap our head around. And from an education standpoint, we are constantly telling our brand partners, we are one piece of this puzzle, what is happening in social media. And so there's a lot of conversation of, do we enable the creators, the racers, the enthusiasts, the builders, an area in our tool where they could add anecdotal other pieces. Like, hey, I went to the Good Guys car show and I met 150 people that saw the sign with your brand name on. Are there other ways we can help them try to quantify when it's very difficult, when there isn't? Because if you did have media like TV and stuff, then there are ways to kind of measure that. But then there's kind of is the juice worth the squeeze? You start to get into that, right? Like the cost of Nielsen, or there is a large sponsorship technology company in kind of the sports realm. And they've been around for a long time, and they have some amazing kind of really hardcore. So if you were a brand spending millions in sponsorships, you are sponsoring the races, you are sponsoring the tracks and the racers. A tool like that, that's maybe $30,000 a year, might make sense for you, because you do want to get a bit more granular. Ours is more just like, what's happening on social media, right? Because it's a question that's very hard to answer, especially when you work with more than 3 or 4 people.
So my sort of lead in, and for folks that have joined, watching this recorded later, you might be thinking, oh, but automotive feels so niche. I just sell luxury pots and pans or handbags or shirts or whatever. But I think when we were talking a couple of weeks back, like the really interesting thing about this conversation to me was, and I want you to sort of describe, because you'll do it better, but having to sell an item that's a high ticket price, but that not even everybody can buy, because it might be this component of year, make, and model application, other aftermarket things you might have done. Like there's so many other considerations. And so for our audience, and I'll definitely let you follow, but for the audience that's here, it's like the application here is, this is so tricky, having to find quality and derive value when even when you feel like my applicable audience is X, only a subset of them can even consider buying a specific SKU. They just simply can't buy it, even if it's the best ad ever, best price ever, best promotion ever. They simply won't. But I want you to sort of describe it too. But like that was like those, being able to work in that environment makes selling a luxury item that anybody could buy. It's like, well, it's kind of easy. Like it gives you new perspective on like, how do you tackle this challenge when it's just so noisy? There's so many advertisers, so much happening. But I want you to describe it, even though I sort of stole the thunder.
No, it's fine. No, I mean, it's a good lead up into it in that. So first thing, if you have a higher ticket item that you are selling, and again, it doesn't have to be in our world, ours just gets really specific. But if you're higher ticket, if you were above 79, 89, there's kind of this magic. It'd be interesting to hear from you guys. And if you have data, I'm sure there's data around it. Where is that mental block where all of a sudden it becomes not an impulse purchase?
Yeah.
Right. It becomes let me stop and think about it. Right. Oh, I got to think about it. Or, oh, I got to go measure that thing, or, oh, I got to see what kind of connection port my whatever it is has, or, oh, I have to see, even furniture for the home, right? Like, you might think, oh yeah, I need this piece. And then, oh, I got to look at the dimensions. Oh, I got to look at the shape, right? So anything where there's like this added step where it's not an impulse buy. So it's over a certain price point, and it's not of course it'll work for me. Right. And even with clothing, I would say there's certain things, if it's a manufacturer you're not used to, or something more customer, or shoes that, they might say like, oh, like make sure to measure your waistline or your this to make sure. And you're like, oh shoot, I gotta find that weird like measuring tape that goes around, like the soft one. So there's an extra step, right? And so this is where I would say there's two sides to this. And it's one thing, and I mentioned this to you. When you don't have an impulse buy, there's a few things to keep in mind. And this is why I'm a huge advocate of, I always think when and if you can have an affiliate tool in place, it makes sense. Just the way your affiliate program might look and feel is going to be different than an impulse buy mainstream, stupid Facebook ad product that's like, oh, it's a 3-in-1. I did like this one almost got me the other day. They were going to charge shipping and it was going to take a month. It's a stupid 3-in-1 cleaner for like bottles. Like we have a lot of water bottles. We have they're like weird to clean, and there's all kinds of weirdness. And so it's like, oh, that's an impulse buy. Everybody could use a water bottle cleaner like that water bottle cleaner, right? And it seemed so cheap until you saw that the shipping was like 3 times as much. But things like that are easy. An affiliate, and you'll hear stories of affiliate like, oh, I sold so much from my affiliate program. You're like, oh, I want to get those same results. But when you have a higher dollar non-impulse buy, it's going to look a bit different, right? You're not going to see tons of sales coming through. This is much more than where I see, and why we are partnered is because I really want to see that full story, that full funnel story of what's happening on social media and how does that play out in a conversion story of sales. And is there a correlation between those partners who post more often about your brand, who talk more often about your brand, right? And there still needs to be something in it for them to do that. You can't just say like, oh, you'll work off commission.
Yeah.
Okay. Even if you have a $3,000 product, which a lot of people that have a $3,000 product are somewhat loath to give a 10% commission. So they might give a 5%. It's $150.
Yeah.
If I have 100,000 followers, I am not doing content for you for $150. And I know that that product is going to be, my customers might think, oh, maybe, and they're going to think about it. And maybe they have to create a little slush fund. And maybe it's that thing they're going to buy after the holiday, if it even fits their vehicle, or if it fits in their scenario. And so the chance that I'm going to move this product, because they're not necessarily no-brainer products, when you get in these higher things, it's just going to be so much more narrow. So I really think you need both. You need to measure what's happening in the partnership. And then I think the conversion story is like the icing on the cake. It's great to have this data, and it's great to have that insight, and reward them for it, or even just have it where you can see. We actually have a decent amount in that we're having a strategy conversation of one of our partners that's on Reversion. A lot of their partners just don't care about the commission. Like even if it is 130, but like they don't care. They don't care about the commission, right? They have this partnership. They need this product, right, to perform in their vehicles. And so they would rather instead get a 10% promo code and discount for the product than get paid on it. And so again, we use reversion to play out that story. And it's really great because we still use the link. And then we also have the promo code. So it tells us like, okay, they got this many clicks on the link, and then, then put in the promo code here. So you got to think about it different. It is not, you can't talk to your friend who's got an e-com no-brainer product and listen to their affiliate stories, because yours is going to be very different. And to think with a niche high-end product that you are only going to sell on affiliate only, and these larger influencers or people that you want the street cred from them to be like, oh yeah, that guy, he's doing this, is doing that, he's using their product. You want that, trust by association, which is essentially what the whole influencer world is all about. And especially in worlds like ours, where it's not just like, oh, I think dude is cool, so I'm going to do what he does. It's more like, oh, they are racing, they are performing, that product helps them win. That, they trust, like in our world, nobody is going to put anything on their vehicle, even when it comes to cleaners. They are so persnickety. Even when it comes to just like the different things they use on their vehicle, they're not going to put something on their vehicle that they do not trust and believe in. And so that gives it that, trusted by association.
Yeah, I mean, you had talked about like things considered purchases. There is like that sort of magic dollar amount where it's like, as a millennial, you go, this is a big screen purchase, not a small screen purchase. Where it's like, I'm going to shift from phone to desktop. I bought a new monitor, and like you would think it's so easy to buy a display these days, but then once you need USB-C ports, and once you need, how many of them do you need, and what resolution do you need? You're like, now I'm just researching this thing that it feels like it should be easy on the surface, but the second you get into the nitty gritty, either you'll sell through and you'll have tons of returns, which is worse for a brand to have to then issue repayment, pay for shipping back, you paid for shipping before, like you're losing money, or you have to think a little bit. I think it's just a bit more logically about like, well, how does somebody get ultimately to this decision to do this thing? What is the thing that drives them to do it? And when you do that, and maybe this is a sort of like a good lead in, you kind of talked about this, but like you begin to think about what metrics will ultimately be leading indicators of that sort of like lagging indicator sale. Because if the purchase is going to take a few weeks, you don't want to just like put stuff out and wait a few weeks. You kind of want to know, well, what else could ultimately drive this, right? If there's no engagement with the post, if there's no visibility of the post, it's probably not going to logically result in any long-term value. But when you advise folks, and you did talk about this a little bit, like what are some of those chief considerations when it comes to metrics or visibility or frequency of posts, or like breadth of how many partnerships? Like, do you have an approach that you recommend? Maybe almost like if the budget was less of a consideration, but it's more like, this is just how you need to think about this. You've got to do, you can't just do a big splash post with one really expensive person. It's not going to work. What is your sort of advice or go-to there? Because I do think it still parlays directly into almost any other considered purchase out there. Yeah.
So I think it's, and you mentioned kind of the timeline in weeks. In our world, it can be months, right? Yeah. Like a lot of our brands and partners, they're aspirational purchases. Some are more commodities, maybe oils or things like that you're going through at a higher clip. When I think of, and this is always the bummer thing, is you talk a little bit about kind of from a marketing standpoint, unfortunately, there's no silver bullet here. And there is no silver bullet metric. Everybody wants one. There never has been one. Marketing, like most segments of business, they just make shit up, right? And they're trying to justify whatever. And then the fallacy being, well, let's track this sale, right? And I see this very often in companies, which is very much in our world, run by engineers or people that have an operational background, and they don't have any sales and marketing background. So they have no cognizance of how much, and sometimes this can be considered a dirty word, but we use it very intentionally, how much your brand awareness, your brand respect, your brand trust really matters. And it's very hard to quantify that brand trust, right? It's very hard to quantify, but you can start to sense it and you can see it. So what I will do sometimes with my clients is I will point out areas in industries that they recognize and know, with different brand partners that they know, when they kind of feel like they don't maybe have that level yet. And I'll say, this is how you can see it online.
Yeah.
Everyone is using them.
Yeah.
And it's not in our industry. And I would say for anybody with high dollar products, I would really consider this as how you're going to go about it. It is building long-term partnerships. It is not a one-off. We do something kind of what you mentioned with one person, one time. You can have that here and there, but you should always have a consistent ongoing strategy where other people are singing your praises authentically, right? You should have people in your customer database that are raving fans that love your product, even if they're smaller on social media, but they can produce content at a higher frequency. And then as a brand, you can reshare, you can reuse that content, you can put ads behind that content, you can spread that message out. So it doesn't look like you as the brand, you're showing this trust, these partnerships, and using that to get the word out, and then how we kind of decide is we look at like engagement rate, right? So like, what's the engagement rate percentages? What are the engagements? If we're going to look at someone out of a big group, like let's say someone's working with 100 people, now they want to narrow down who are their 10, like these are our ride or dies. Like we are going to use them for all of our promotions. And then we're going to look at a few things. We're going to look at the frequency and the quality of the content. So some of that is, subjective versus objective. Frequency being very objective, quality being subjective. And then we're going to look at, what is that rate of engagement? What is that? And try to find a mix between, when we say larger in our world, that's usually someone in that 150 to 250 to 300, like in that range. Well, there are people in the millions. There's not a ton of them. And those that are, it just depends on then it's like that's a whole other world, like touching into that. And then some of the smaller, so those micro influencers, you want that kind of good mix of people that are always talking about your brand. Having it, and if you have a product that people like and think is cool, and sometimes it takes a few other people being like, this product is legit. Mm-hmm. Like, I really like this product. I will say I did that with a healthcare provider recently. Not only did I know some people, but I was like, everybody is talking about this healthcare provider. I'm going to try it. If there's any women here that are my age listening to this, you probably know who it is because they have ads everywhere. They're working with every influencer. But it's, but it worked. It's a cool by association. And I feel like, are you really going to trust your healthcare to some rando that you don't really believe in? I fail to believe anybody who put their name on the line for a healthcare provider if they didn't really believe in it. So, I think that's kind of the same in this world. So, it's different. I would love to say there's one single leading indicator, but it's going to be, and this is what makes it hard. Marketing is hard. Building a brand is difficult. If it was easy, everybody would do it. Right. And you see ups and downs. And so, but there is a big thing around brand awareness, and a lot of people forget that.
Yeah. I think the thing with brand, I think the thing with, if somebody is skeptical of like the importance of brand, like certainly like you can spin up a Shopify store that sells probably from the same manufacturer of a really popular brand and just try to go live. You will not see it. Just same product, same website, same layout and experience, same conversion funnel. But there's something that in that brand awareness, it eases conversion rate, right? Like it's just, I know what I'm getting.
Yeah.
That's why, people don't all just like flock to buying something on Temu where it's like, oh, this is the same, because there's just sort of this like gap. And like, I just trust who this manufacturer is, even if it's from the same place. Right. Yeah. There is this association that, it's brand awareness, but like, I think you can translate just more directly to conversion rate, right? Conversion rate goes up when people are more confident in what you're
Right.
providing and what the product is doing. Yeah, you can get a pop for sure if it's a pretty inexpensive product,
Yeah.
like low risk. Sure,
Yeah.
you could drive a
Yeah.
bunch of volume that way because it's low risk. You
But
might
it can be
lose repeat
short-lived.
purchases, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless
Be
it's
short-lived.
legitimately good, right? Like it could be like
Right.
Pinterest, right? It was this thing that just exploded because it was free, and it sort of sustained because
Yeah.
it was good, right? That's what
Right.
happens.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if they're not good, you just come back down to earth in
Yeah.
a pretty
Well,
remarkable crash.
yeah. Yeah. And again, that kind of timeline, it's going to depend on your product and the buying cycle of your consumers. To what you said before, there's going to be a lag there.
Yeah.
We have so many that will run an influencer campaign, or they'll partner with somebody like, oh, we're looking for sales right this second. I'm like, you're selling an $8,000 product. Like,
That
that's
that works
great.
on 2 makes and models.
Yeah, I'm like, you're not going to see that conversion. Though we did have, there's a particular influencer in our space, and he actually does. I would have said I wouldn't have thought this would have worked as well as it did. One of our clients, they are a fuel additive company to increase performance in vehicles, right? And they partnered with an influencer for kind of a one-off thing. They sent him a whole bunch of product. They did not pay him. At this point, he does not work for product only because he did have like millions of followers. And he usually does car reviews. So he's not known necessarily for like performance vehicles.
Okay.
But the content he did for this was kind of outside of what he does for his regular stuff, was amazing. The amount of effort he put into it. I put in the additive, he took it to the dyno, he ran it to show the performance and to show how the performance changes. He took the car out. I mean, he did all this really cool stuff. And then you could literally see, I remember it like it was the post was on like April 12th. And you see their website analytics, because they don't, like a lot of our clients don't always focus on D2C. They do work through a lot of distributors. But you see all of a sudden their website, their website analytics pop up, like literally 500% increase for the whole next week after these posts go live. And then you see over the next month, their sales doubled week over week online. Now, they have an inexpensive product. So, the product is maybe $20 and you see this dude, he adds it, he gets more performance. And so, again, of a different use case, but it was something that, that was an area where we did see that immediate, but I say like, kind of like any diet pill or something, like results not typical. Like that doesn't always happen that way. You don't see the person talk about it once and then it spikes up. Especially if you're a longer known brand, you may not see a spike because people already know what your products are. So if you've been on the market, they may not be like, oh, this is a newer brand. They're only like a couple years old. So there probably was a good amount of people that followed him, especially because he usually does new car reviews, that wasn't familiar with this brand and they were curious. So, again, you have to look at every scenario. But I have to tell marketers and agencies, you got to have a strategy. There isn't, you got to have a strategy, you got to have a plan, you got to have conversations, you got to educate yourself, you got to try things and then see what feels right and what works right for your brand, because what works right for one person may not work for another. But to what you said earlier, that doesn't mean you need to spend tens of thousands of dollars by any means, right? And especially if you're in the right space, you can get people to work that want to be in product, and or every now and again, depending on what kind of industry you are, you might have people that are very savvy with affiliate and they enjoy that affiliate side of their business. Maybe they have blogging, maybe they have other means than just social media. They have a little storefront where they can kind of embed these affiliate links. So, it just kind of depends on how it structures. But it, there's not just one button or one metric. So that's like the Debbie Downer message.
It's a good segue though into, I'll leave this as sort of our last like main question. And then if anybody has any questions for us here, or we can wrap up our stream today. But so I've got like a high dollar considered purchase, average time. I've been talking to all of my customers, which is like sort of a key thing that marketers really should do, is actually talk to your customers and figure out how did you go through this decision? Don't send an email. Like, just see if you can't get a hold of them.
Yeah.
Try to have an actual meeting with them. There's so much that you miss because no one wants to type out a long email. No one wants to, read a long book, even if it was dictated. Oh, this is exactly what they did. No one wants to read that.
Right.
Just have a conversation with that customer. But let's say you do. Okay, I kind of understand what we're trying to be evaluating. I kind of understand the timeline. How do you approach testing when it's something like, it could be jewelry, it could be automotive parts, anything where it's like it's super expensive, it's going to be considered a considered purchase, it's going to have lag. How do I know that I'm kind of going about testing this and measuring whether I was on the mark, off the mark? How do you do that?
So first things first, you kind of nailed it, but I'm going to add something to what you said about talking to your existing customers. Go through your existing social media and all of your social media tags and look for people that are already using your product, already have your product, already love your product, and they've tagged you. And their content seems pretty decent. They seem to have a good story. They seem to have an okay grouping of followers. They don't need to be the end all be all in your influencer strategy, but they could be a very good place to start. Right. And that's a great place to start on seeing, would they want to do any more content? Would they want to do something else now in collaboration? And sometimes if they're already using your product and they love your product, if they can just get a discount on another, because they paid full price for that one that they already have. So, they've got the means to afford it. And especially if they're not, I've seen people that are straight up paid influencers that when a brand they love and they're already fans of reaches out to them, in a lot of cases, you may not get always for free, but, it's a win-win on both sides because they're already, such huge fans. So I would start there. And then, some of it is letting them do their thing. Be very, very careful of trying to dictate a script. So one of the things I mentioned when you think of this concept of like an earned media value, part of what goes into that is this, you didn't have to pay for content creation. And just so everybody is clear, if you want a commercial, those are $5,000 to $10,000 off the jump, right? You've got rights, you've got actors, you've got all these weird costs add up before you even know it. If you want real humans, I mean, if you want to do AI commercials, knock yourself out. Good luck with that. But I still believe there's something to be said for, people buy from people. And so, I think that's something too that people get very confused. So they want to dictate a script to an influencer or content creator or this, random fan that's really into their stuff. So don't do that, right? Let them do their own thing. And especially if you do it in a way where it's a product discount, it doesn't always need to be a full comp depending on kind of that pricier product.
Yeah.
And in the type of product, that's the best place to start with trying different types of content. And maybe if you have a little bit of a budget, try a couple people that are on the lower side of paid, just to figure out what works before you start jumping off and doing these huge creator activations. Get out there and see what works. And then how you'll know if it's working or not is kind of a couple-fold. You'll see it in the engagement on their content. So, is that content engaging? How does it compare, across each other, right? Benchmarking them across each other. Even if they have different sizes, the engagement rates will somewhat play out and normalize, what that looks like. And then some of it's very personal too for you as a brand. Whose content do you just like better? What resonates better with your brand? And if it's engaging with audiences, right? Then you can start to get the feel of what kind of people do you want representing your brand, right? And then you can start to branch out, do more, grow the program and grow what's in it, right? We have some brands where they work with influencers. The person gets a forever promo code that they get to use personally. They can't, for their own products, a special way to buy, and then kind of get whatever they want at a pretty hefty discount. They can't share that with their audience necessarily, but it's for them to keep creating content. And then for things that the brand really needs content on, they might then say, hey, we're going to send you this product 100% comped if you could do something on it, or they might bring them to an experience. That's another big one. We're going to pay for your flights and hotels to come to this event if you will talk about us. But yeah, I mean, I would start with who are existing, like start with product discount first, and then get a sense, and then you can start to grow from there. I see too many people jump in the deep end. They'll swing up an agency, then they'll hire these expensive creators, and depending on what you're trying to do, I would also argue too that if you can't maintain the partnerships, it almost looks worse.
Yeah.
So if you have someone talk about you once, I'll use Factor Meals as my favorite one for this example. They should fire their agency. Just anybody that's ever talked about Factor Meals that I've seen, at least in my sphere, what I see is a lot of motorsports and automotive. They hit our space pretty hard. I never saw them talk about it again.
Yeah.
So what that tells me is they are not eating that product.
Yes.
They don't really like your product, not paid,
yeah.
And they never talked about it again. Build partnerships, build long-term partnerships. Don't do transactional influencer deals.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would underline from going to that existing customer base that already has bought the product, as well as operationally, it could be easier to establish these partnerships if they're not huge creators, that they're familiar with your brand. They have a minor following, but they definitely influence the people around them in their daily lives. We just got one of those like big old TV calendars in our kitchen to stay on track as a family. Had a family birthday party, and like 5 people were like, "What is that? I want this." Like that can actually happen. And it's easier to work with these smaller creators so that you can get that sort of motion down. There's nothing worse, and I've done this personally. There's nothing worse than the pressure of we're paying somebody $20,000 to do this thing by this date, has to be right, and this is our first go at doing this ever, right? It's a lot of pressure. And how many Super Bowl commercials can we recall of brands that literally didn't exist 2 or 3 years later? Just because it's a big exposure, it doesn't mean immediate value and revenue. Like, again, unless you're selling something for a nickel with free shipping, sure, maybe that will work.
Yeah. I would even argue that the ones that do have the good commercials that win the things, it's like, even if T-Mobile has the best commercial in the world, there is no world in which I am ever switching to T-Mobile. Like, not happening. Not ever going to happen. Right? I did actually do it once when I was on maternity leave. It was a terrible experience. So that's also why I would never do it. But yeah, so, I mean, I think it's too, like, your sphere of influence is only so much, and knowing who and where that is, I think that's another one. Who are you trying to influence? What is the audience? What are the demographics? You can do your test runs and start to play with demographics with that by asking those influencers, what is their demographic, and knowing what you're going for. I think that's a big thing we see too. There's a lot of brands, especially in our industry, that are legacy brands, that are older brands, but they very much missed the influencer wave. They didn't have a product that's really a motorsports product that kind of keeps it thriving, and they are aging out.
Yeah.
Boomers, they're on fixed income right now. And it's their customer base is aging out. And that's going to hurt over time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, final question. As you think about the space, you've observed a lot in this space. This is subjective. Or maybe we could say as an expert, this is objective. Who's a brand, whether it's in your space or not, like considered purchase, expensive item, one-off purchase probably, or maybe like sort of a multiple years even between when they buy this thing, like who seems to be doing it well? And I think you could just sort of highlight a brand maybe, or I think you thought that was interesting. But like what I would challenge folks that watch this later, right, is like just sort of dig into that brand a little bit, even if it's not, you're like, I'm not in automotive. Like, it's just sort of understand what tactic they're approaching, because the way that they drive a purchase is way harder than most industries. And so like there could be learnings that can be gleaned from that.
Yeah. Okay. So I will give you a few across
Okay.
industry. Okay. So one from my industry of a brand, full disclosure, they are a client, but I absolutely love their approach to how they think of their influencer partnerships and relationships is a company called QA1. They own multiple brands, Speed Sport, Detroit Speed. They do not have cheap products. It's hard to say what their average product price is because it kind of depends on kind of the different brands they're in. But they started very small with just some people that had reached out, and they do have someone. She is focused. She also does all of their events. She's been on our podcast, Creators and Coffee, a few times, but she just started taking a chance on people, sending discounted product, maybe a little bit of comp product, you to just say, hey, and go do your thing. And what she does that's so different is she builds long-term relationships. She reaches out to them. She stays connected, kind of like what you said, reaching out to your customers. She does that with their influencer program. They all have her cell phone number. She's become very close with so many of them. So they have scaled their program from very small to very large now at this point. And because they've been such a good partner, some of their content creators that they worked with are influencers or builders or racers because they kind of go across the gamut. They're a little bit of everything. They've blown up. They're huge. But those people are still loyal to this brand. And they are one of the best brands in the industry. So it makes sense that they're still loyal to this brand. But they are still loyal to this brand because of those partnerships formed with Casey, with the team. So they are one of my favorites. Though it is a little bit like calling favorites between kids. So I don't want to make any other brand feel bad. But the QA1 has been literally one of our longest partners. And they have a kind of a vast array of how they think of it. So I like that. Outside of automotive, so the brand I was talking about before, so there's a company called MIDI Health, and they're very focused on menopause women. So I'm in that age range. And I think, they might have gone a little over the top, but literally every influencer I follow, that most of them are like comedians actually, but women that joke about like perimenopause and all of the like side effects. But they've done such a great job of reaching out to, and these are huge, and these aren't the like Hailey Biebers of the world. Which obviously she's not even near perimenopause, but you know what I mean? But I think they did such a nice job of like the diversity, and they just really nailed like every social creator they've worked with. So then it's this like, well, everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a one-off. Like people are still talking about this brand and it's been a year. So, and then you start to have friends that have tried, right? Like it may not have been enough, but then I have friends that have now tried it. And so then now I've been like, oh, okay. And so, I've gone to one of my favorite creators. I clicked on their thing and then I went in, and that's your health, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that, and I was a conversion there. And then, I think those are the two for me that stand out the most. I think one other that's kind of starting to get interesting in how they're approaching it, which I really like, is Beehive. They're the newsletter company. And they're starting to do some really interesting things with how they're using the influencer content, and they're using it in ads, which is a little bit annoying because the ads are interrupting my Facebook scrolling. As far as like it's that midstream Facebook one, like it's in the middle of a reel, or like Instagram, it's right in the middle of the reel, which I don't love. And you can't skip them. But they're using real users of their platform, which I really, really like. And they're a platform already designed for content creators.
Yeah.
And so I think, they're kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. Well, they're not necessarily B2B. They kind of are. So those are my three across different industries.
Awesome. They sort of like underlined a lot of what you talked about today as well. Erica, thank you so much for the time. Yeah. Thank you for depositing this knowledge on us folks that are watching these recordings. Really enjoyed it. I think taking some of these learnings and thinking more critically about how you approach partnerships and affiliate and the whole conversion life cycle and brand, it's essential. Yeah. There's so many things out there. There's so many distractions. Like you do really need to invest in that differentiation. Most brands are not Amazon and Walmart where people just go like, oh, I'll just go here and buy my thing. Most folks are much smaller in comparison and really have to pursue those customers. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Erica, thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for everyone that joined us. Looking forward to our next conversation, of course.
Yeah.
Always a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me on. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Erica.